Talk Jewelers, timeless jewelry for generations.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the show Fight Against COVID 19. I'm your host, Dr. Shafali Agrawal. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing our show. We're very excited to have another series of the show. I have somebody very special who's doing a lot of things for COVID 19. He's been advising people, he's also very published. His name is Dr. Basu from Memphis, Tennessee. Wealth of knowledge about COVID, what to do, what not to do. So let's learn from him today about COVID 19. Welcome, Dr. Basu.
You're welcome. Vasu Ray.
Pastor Ray, how are you, Doctor?
Thank you. Well, I'm pretty good. Busy nowadays, but otherwise good. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure for having you here. So tell me a little bit about yourself, your background to the viewers.
So I'm trained. I came to this country trained as a cardiologist from India, and then I trained here again in medicine, cardiology, and then cardiac electrophysiology. Have been trained at different places like Mass General, Tulane University, Baylor College of Medicine, and have been a faculty in these places also. Presently, I work in an academic setting at the VA in Memphis. I'm also a professor at the University of Memphis. I'm also a visiting professor at the second AIMS after Delhi, which is the AIMS at Rishikesh. I'm a visiting professor of cardiology there and also the head of integrative cardiology at that institution. So I basically do a lot of, other than the clinical work, I do some of the latest stuff in the world, like putting in leadless pacemakers, atrial fibrillation, VT ablation, putting in different devices for heart failure. I do a lot of research. Most of my research is on using artificial intelligence to do a bunch of things in cardiology.
Yeah.
I've also been doing research on how to predict COVID using artificial intelligence because, as you know, especially in the frontliners, it's not always possible. COVID might come without symptoms.
Yeah.
So there may be other symptoms from the body which are very subtle, which might help us pick it up, especially in high risk population, people who are old with hypertension, diabetes. That's one of my research. The other research is on the role of meditation, that is yoga and meditation in modern medicine. So I've been one of the 7, 8 cardiologists who we wrote down the guideline for the American Heart Association, how you can use meditation therapeutically, scientifically for treating a bunch of cardiovascular disorders, including hypertension.
So I know that you have played an integral part in COVID awareness and trying to do things, have published a lot, both in Indian newspapers and many more. Can you provide a little bit what your contribution has been and how you're providing this awareness?
Yeah, so I have been in almost all the top channels in India, including Doordarshan, Z, Times News, India TV, and have a regular weekly update on Outlook magazine. Had multiple interviews in different papers in India, plus in magazines like Swarajya, online in multiple papers, and online TV, online digital magazines. The basic problem in India was just like what we had when we first started in January, early February. We didn't have much knowledge about COVID. But then slowly we learned. In the last 3 months, we learned a lot because it's a novel disease. We had no experience. It was a different virus altogether. We never had a virus like that before.
Yeah.
We had similar, but it's quite different from this one. So India started a little late from us. The good news was that they put in a lockdown much earlier, which
Yeah.
helped save a lot of people, and also delayed events. So initially, when India started, just like us, they didn't have much information. So I think we, taking advantage of my being in the US, we could pass down a lot of information at different levels.
Yeah.
Some at the administrative level, some at the population level, some at the public health level, as to what needs to be done about COVID, how to prevent its spread, what to do during lockdown, how to open up. I was one of the first people who wanted things to get opened up, and that was viral in news. We did a interview in multiple newspapers as to how India can start opening up, because if it doesn't open, if not from COVID, from financial disaster, people will
Yes.
die.
Yeah.
So I've been a strong proponent of things getting opened up quickly.
So I know you got published in Indian Express and other newspapers. Tell me a little bit about what contributions, how, what is your message there?
So my message is, yeah, in Express, Times of India, name it, Economic Times. I mean, almost all the top newspapers, Hindustan Times, almost all the top newspapers in the country and all over the country published it. TV channels took it, news channels like Doordarshan, Z, etc., etc. So the news, the A is very clear. When we started, we didn't know about COVID. So we thought COVID could spread almost by all known means. Now we know, theoretically, yes, if you get a packet from Amazon or you bring your home food from a restaurant to eat that night, that packet might have COVID. But now it's very clear to us, theoretically it is possible, but the actual spread by all these things are extremely low. Second of all, what is more important is initial reports in New England Journal of Medicine, print published by the authors who unfortunately did not give the right information, made us believe, and a lot of epidemiologists, infectious disease guys believe that even asymptomatic patient can spread it randomly, or pre-symptomatic patient can spread it randomly. Now we know that's not true. Also, pre-symptomatic, not more than 13% spread from pre-symptomatic. Asymptomatic, we still don't have the data in the full term. The reason is the when to know the asymptomatic spread, you have to test everybody, which is
Right.
not possible even today in America, leave alone in India.
Yeah.
But in households where suppose you have 6 members or 10 members, the spread is supposed to be based on a Chinese paper around 44%. Um, so that means if you have 6 people in your house, 3 people will get it. But remember, in house you cannot maintain social distancing.
Absolutely.
So so without social distancing, if it is just 50%, logically it means that when you're maintaining social distancing outside, it will be much lower.
Yeah.
And we also came out with which we I brought it out based on a paper by London School of Tropical Medicine, that we have two things. We have something mathematical modeling. We have two things. One we call the R factor, R like Roger or Romeo. The R factor is how many guys get infection from one guy,
Yeah.
and the number for COVID is 3. So that is without social distancing. Now, there's another important factor that came into play in the last couple of weeks, and that's called the K factor. K for King or K for Karan. So K factor is actual dispersibility, which showed that actually 10% of people are spreading the 80% of COVID.
Wow.
So if you maintain social distancing, and you might start opening things, because see, it's a fine balance. Health has to balance with economy. You
Yes.
can't have people killing themselves because of hunger at
Yeah.
the same time maintain social distancing and lockdown. So you have to balance that. So with all
So,
this new knowledge, I advised India should needs to open up maintaining social distancing.
so like, it's a little different from US than India. What are the challenges you feel in India as you were talking about, COVID opening and COVID outbreak, and what are the things that you talked about in general, and what message you want to give?
So the biggest problem in India is, I think, is education. People needs to be educated. People are literally terrorized. It's like some sort of a ghost lingering around to kill everybody.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Yeah.
It is undoubtedly a bad disease. There's no doubt about it. I don't want to belittle the dangers of COVID. At the same time, it's not like a magical death wand being thrown around so everybody who even smells it from 1 mile apart dies out
Can
of it.
get, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that needs to be opened up. Unless you do that, you see what's happening. They're killing doctors.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's sad, really sad.
it's sad because they think these doctors are spreading. I mean, there's a doctor who's very closely known to the friend of mine. He couldn't even be buried. He was a Christian guy from Madras,
Oh
a
my God.
neurologist. He spent his life trying to help out these COVID people. And at the time of his burial, they wouldn't even allow him to be buried because they thought just burying him would make COVID. And he died of COVID. and there's
Oh
no
my
reason
God.
for him to. Yeah, because there was no reason for him to see
So is
COVID
that the
patients.
fear that people don't know enough, so they tend to react?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It's the fear. So you have to do aggressive education. Now, the advantage we have in America is like internet, Google. You go, you read, you know, you update. India, unfortunately, a lot of places A don't have internet. B, they are not educated enough, or they have a computer or a cell phone to go into internet. And C, even if you have everything, the internet quality is so poor you
Yeah.
can hardly see a movie, or you can hardly see a streaming thing. So how will you be educated other than from posters or public signs in the road? So which unfortunately is not a very popular way of educating people.
So, what are some of the, like, I know that one of the things that we hear is all these migrants moving from here to there, all this people collecting together. That became a big deal. And, although Indian government was trying to control, that was a challenge. What was your opinion? Like, I know they are opening up gradually. How do you actually deal with something like that with such a big population?
So it is a huge population. Okay, so remember we have migrants here too. There are tons of people in New York who are working in financial hubs. There are tons of people in California. There are tons of people in Boston who are working with the health and medical industry, pharmaceutical industry. They don't live
Right.
in Boston. They are not from Boston. So this is a natural phenomena in a modern industrialized society. Anybody. I mean, some people, even 60 or 70% people living in London are not from London,
Yeah.
but they have to live there because
So
for years they're working.
migrants are everywhere, you mean to say?
Everywhere, exactly. So that is not a peculiar phenomenon in India. If you have jobs in Bombay, you and I will go to Bombay, though we may be from Calcutta or Delhi or Madras, doesn't matter. So this is a normal phenomena of the industrialized world. Now, as far as COVID is concerned, I think what needed to be done was a more pragmatic way of handling both from the state government and from the center. Center did try to do a good job trying to get them on a train to go back to their state, but many states had problems. They didn't want
Yeah.
them, they treated them badly, they didn't provide appropriate
Food
protection
and
before they could go.
facilities, yeah.
Right. So what do you expect these poor people? They were walking. Some people have walked hundreds and thousands of miles to go to their home. And what do you think they did? They obviously spread COVID all the way through. It's not their fault. It's a complete mess that it was. Hopefully, it has got better now. So my advice would have been like, suppose we have X number of people tanked up in Bombay, or X number of people tanked up in Delhi who are from Calcutta, Madras, Gujarat, wherever. All of them had to be tested, and then arrangement made for them there till the state government takes it.
Do you think
But
there is scarcity of testing? Like there's not that many facilities, so it's hard?
absolutely, there is. We need to increase testing to a massive extent. There is been testing has to go. Some places, like for example, NICED in Calcutta, which is the National Institute, had testing kit sitting there, but there was no people being sent by the government to get tested.
I see.
And in other places there was no kit. So it was a variety of different reasons, but yes, much more people needs to be tested.
So, like when you compare, and it's hard to compare US versus India, what are the different unique things that are particularly for US and then particularly for India?
So the US, the biggest problem was lack of lockdown.
Yeah.
So Columbia University 2 weeks back came with the statistics that clearly showed the March 1st was the lockdown, and at that time there were 65,000 deaths in America. If the lockdown was 1 week back, the total number of deaths would have been 29 to 30,000.
Yeah.
If it was just 2 weeks back, that is around 15th, 16th of February, the total number of deaths would have been only 11,000.
Yeah.
This is from modeling from Columbia, which they've been doing a lot of modeling
Yes,
of late.
of course. Yeah.
Now, the good thing about India is the political decision taken by the Indian government was very positive. They went for a complete lockdown. Though the lockdown was not followed appropriately in many state governments, rural states. I mean, people still went to masjid and prayed, and there were still people taking their days off as festivals. I mean, it's not a festival. You're off because there's a dangerous disease out there. You
Yeah.
should be at
Yeah.
home. But if you look at the number of cars going out in the streets, it looks like there's a festival going on there.
Yeah.
So, though national level they did an excellent job, some of the state unfortunately did not do a good job, and the state which did a good job, like for example, say Karnataka, they still have very few deaths. They still have very
Yes.
few COVID cases.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but there are some states for different reasons. One is population. So one thing that has to be understood that if we think New York has the worst concentration of population in this country, most populated place, most cities in India have 10 times that population in this
Yes,
in a
that is
square foot
true.
area.
That is true.
So it is inherently more difficult. America has done around 20 million tests. So
Yeah.
America is a 300 billion nation. America is much more richer financially, much more yeah, than India. So we cannot give them numbers, but India has to obviously do much more
Much
testing
more
to find out.
to prevent that.
To be-
What do you see the future like where in US and India? So we are hearing about opening now. Like I'm in Massachusetts, and they're opening the second phase actually on Monday, and other cities have already started the second phase. And then you look at this, and you look at India. What do you see the future in next 2 to 3 months?
So talking about the United States, I think the future is good for three reasons. One is their curve has gone down.
Yeah.
So that means there is at least some level of education of the people, and they are maintaining some. I mean, there are exceptions, people on the beach or this of
Yeah.
recent this
Yeah.
racial thing where a lot of people. But if you notice, I was watching all this racial demonstration,
Protest. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
those young guys they were still wearing all masks,
Mask. Yeah. Yeah.
which is good. And so, but these obviously will increase number to some extent, but otherwise. Second important thing is there are three different drug in trials. So you can put a patient on either remdesivir or on plasma or on tocilizumab, which is a interleukin 6 inhibitor. So these drugs, so any patient who's sick as can be on one of these three drugs. And there are initial trials show they work. Plasma is still dicey. Some people it works very well, some people it does not. People in which it works very well, they get out of the ventilator. Some people it does not. And that has been true for plasma. We've been using plasma for 70 years now.
And
It's
you're
not something
treating
new.
COVID patients yourself, right?
Correct. Well, I don't treat myself because I am a cardiac electrophysiologist. They are treated
But in
by
your
other people. I
facility,
am
yeah.
advised to, yeah, like
Yes.
if they have a cardiac problem, like we have people who was in a ward now, in a COVID ward, and we have the patient presented with tachycardia, and I mean, see that the first thing that we showed, we put up an article. We were requested for an article. We put up almost in early February, early April. We actually showed that a lot of people are actually dying because of heart, not the lung.
Yes.
The reason is the lung is badly affected, but you're supporting the lung with a ventilator.
Yeah.
But you cannot support a
The heart.
severely enlarged
Damage the.
heart,
Yeah.
damaged heart. They have severe myocarditis. They have
Yeah.
refractory heart failure.
Yeah.
They are not getting supported. So people are actually dying because of other organ failure.
Yeah.
They're having huge strokes, the
Yeah.
large artery strokes. They're having thrombosis in the internal arteries. There is a form of vasculitis going on, especially in young kids. So
Yeah.
these are sort of non-treatable where you have to just give supportive care.
Yeah.
Now that we have these three, four drugs,
Treatments. Yeah.
people are treatments, they are not even going to that stage. They are
Yeah.
coming out. Almost 30-35% of disease is shortened when you use remdesivir. So that's a
Wonderful.
big news. The initial death was because of this, because these guys were on ventilators for 3 or 4 weeks. They were still alive. There were no medicine, and then they had possibly cardiac. I mean, based on studies from Italy and China, almost most of the deaths were elderly people who had cardiac problems
So
rather than young people.
you see a better future because of the fact that there are drugs, social distancing is working, and you said there's a third point.
Yeah, the third point is that they're working on the vaccine.
Yeah.
And before vaccine comes, there is the natural vaccine, which I call as herd immunity.
Yeah.
Now we know with this spread going on, and that most people, especially young guys, don't get the disease that often. Actually, the latest study that came out less than a week back at NHS, that's the England health system, they came out the study. They actually showed death due to diabetes was 2 to 3 times more. But when they had took all the deaths, very small number were actually young people below 40.
Got it.
Even the fact that they had severe diabetes. So that shows that this cohort is automatically protected. So
Uh-huh.
that what does that means is that there's going to be herd immunity to a large extent, and some of the studies from Stanford and all showed, based on our initial idea was quite wrong. Actually, a lot of people already had it. In Boston also, that study where they did homeless people, out of 200 plus people, 146 already had antibodies,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
there was no history of anybody officially having COVID.
yeah.
So either herd immunity, that is the natural vaccination, might come in, or hopefully by the end of the year. NHS had said by the end of the year they're expecting the Oxford vaccine, American vaccine possibly early first 3 weeks of next year, both Johnson and Johnson and Moderna. But some people are feel even maybe end of this year. Though I personally feel that is being too much on the optimistic side, but you
Yeah,
never know.
still have to work. And how different is this from future for India? Like, is there difference in terms?
So future for India, the thing is that their treatment, right, they still don't have remdesivir. They don't have any of the newer drugs. So, but so having said that, it's difficult to determine how they will react once they start opening up. And the other is another thing also is that because the numbers that we see today is based on the testing. So
Yeah.
obviously, as you test more, you'll get more numbers. That's pretty obvious. So it is difficult to predict what scene will be. As far as plasma is concerned, India can do a good job on that. Plasma is comparatively cheaper.
Yeah.
India has got a very powerful blood banking facility all over the country. Even small districts, small villages have a nearby blood banking facility. So getting plasma should not be difficult if they can make a roster of who are positive people and get them to give blood. Obviously, the cell can be pushed back and just the plasma taken. I was talking to some people. I mean, there is variable ideas. Some people said they have mechanism, they don't have mechanism to actually do that, to take pure plasma. But
Yeah.
that is not a very big obstruction. So if they have plasma, I think that itself will save a lot of people.
So I think it's just amazing. You, as such a wonderful interview, so much information. Thank you for guiding us there, and you've been guiding so many people, in India as well, including in administration and others as well. So it's been a pleasure to have you, and really helping the viewers understand the difference, how you look at India versus US. Any message before we say goodbye to you and thank you
Yeah,
to the
so the
viewers?
main message is COVID-19 is a bad disease, but it doesn't happen by magic. So you just have to be safe, maintain 6 foot distancing. You will be safe. If you are diabetic, especially if it's older diabetic patient, just get your diabetes treated. Normal diabetes, the mortality comes down. Normal hypertension, the mortality comes down. And I think 6 feet, maintaining 6 feet distancing, people should open up their shops, wherever they're working. They can go and work in their workplace, maintaining the distance. Most of the people, not most, majority of the people, even 80 to 90% of the people will be completely safe, have no problem. Even if they have COVID, they'll recover from it. And that's what I'd like to tell everybody.
So, Dr. Basure, it was a pleasure to have you and an honor to have you on the show. Thank you for really informing our viewers about, the differences that we talked about and what may be the future. And you take care and have a great evening.
Thank you to take care and thanks for having me.